It started, as most heartbreaks do, with a whisper of perfection. Not a grand, cinematic declaration, but the quiet hum of two lives slotting together, like perfectly cut puzzle pieces. I was Clara, and he was Leo. We met at a friend's art opening, cliché, I know, but fitting for Leo, who always seemed to exist in a vibrant, slightly chaotic swirl of creativity. He had this laugh, deep and resonant, that made my chest ache in the best way, and eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled, like he held a secret joy he was just waiting to share with you. I was a graphic designer, pragmatic, organized, my life a series of neat folders and deadlines. Leo was an artist, a sculptor, or so he said. His apartment, when I first saw it, was a glorious mess of half-finished projects, clay dust, and canvases leaning against every available wall. It smelled of turpentine and possibility. He talked about his vision, his grand ideas, his struggles to break through. And I, naive and hopelessly smitten, saw not a red flag, but a soulmate. Someone who saw the world in Technicolor, while I was content with CMYK. I thought we balanced each other. I thought I could be his anchor, his quiet support, while he soared. Our early days were a blur of late-night talks, cheap wine on my tiny balcony, and shared dreams. He'd sketch me while I worked on my laptop, his charcoal strokes quick and confident. He'd cook elaborate, slightly burnt meals in my kitchen, filling the air with the scent of garlic and his infectious enthusiasm. He was charming, effortlessly so. My friends, even Maya, my ever-skeptical best friend, were captivated. He's got that artist thing going on, Maya had conceded, a rare smile playing on her lips. But he seems genuinely sweet, Clara. Don't mess it up. And I, foolishly, believed I never would. He moved into my apartment 3 months in. It was a natural progression, or so it felt. His studio lease was up, and my place, though modest, had an extra room he could use for his smaller works. He brought with him a surprising amount of clutter, tools, canvases, books on obscure philosophers, but also a warmth that filled the space. Our mornings became a ritual. Coffee, shared news articles, his hand finding mine across the table. Evenings were spent on the sofa, his arm around me, watching documentaries he swore would expand my mind or listening to experimental jazz that, honestly, just sounded like noise to me. But I pretended to love it, because I loved him. Or, rather, I loved the idea of him, the man he presented himself to be. I was the stable one, the one with the steady job, the health insurance, the savings account that actually had more than 2 digits. He was the artist, the dreamer, the one who lived moment to moment. It felt right, a natural division of labor. I paid for most of the groceries, the rent, the utilities. He'd occasionally sell a small piece, or get a commission for a mural, and he'd insist on treating me to dinner, always somewhere trendy and expensive, making a show of pulling out his wallet, even if it meant he'd be tight for the next few weeks. I never minded. I saw it as investing in his future, in our future. He was going to be big, I just knew it. And when he was, he'd sweep me off my feet, just like in the movies. He had this way of making me feel like I was the only person who truly understood him, who saw past the surface to the genius beneath. He'd tell me about his childhood, a nomadic existence with free-spirited parents, which explained his aversion to corporate structures and the rat race. He'd confide his deepest fears about not making it, about being a fraud. And I, in my boundless empathy, would reassure him, tell him he was brilliant, that his time would come. I became his biggest cheerleader, his unpaid assistant, his emotional punching bag when inspiration eluded him. I'd spend hours listening to him rant about the art world, about critics who didn't get his vision, about gallerists who only cared about commercial appeal. I'd nod, offer quiet encouragement, and secretly research grants and residencies for him, sending him links he'd usually skim and then forget. Looking back, the signs were there, subtle as a whisper in a crowded room. The way he'd always forget his wallet when we went out, knowing I'd just pick up the tab. The way he'd subtly steer conversations back to himself, his art, his struggles. The way he'd dismiss my work, my deadlines, my achievements, with a casual wave of his hand, saying, "Oh, that's just your sensible job, darling." Not like real art. But I was so deeply entrenched in the narrative of our shared dream, so convinced of his inherent goodness and my role in his success, that I brushed them aside. Love, I told myself, was about sacrifice, about supporting your partner unconditionally. And I loved Leo, with a fierce, almost desperate intensity that blinded me to everything else. I was building a future, brick by painstaking brick, and I believed he was building it with me. Every shared laugh, every tender touch, every whispered promise felt like another brick in our foundation, strong and unshakable. I was so wrong. The first crack wasn't a sudden, dramatic fissure, but a hairline fracture, almost imperceptible. It started with the borrowing. Not just for dinner, but for supplies, for a new software subscription he needed for a digital art project, for networking lunches with potential collaborators. He always promised to pay me back, of course. "As soon as this commission comes through, babe, or once the gallery sells that piece, it's all yours, plus interest." He'd flash that charming smile and I'd melt. It wasn't about the money, I told myself. It was about supporting his passion. My savings, which I'd meticulously built up for a down payment on a small condo, slowly started to dwindle. I justified it by telling myself that once Leo's career took off, we'd buy a much bigger, grander place together. A place with a dedicated studio for him, a sprawling garden, maybe even a guest room for Maya. Then came the subtle gaslighting. I'd bring up something he'd said, a promise he'd made, and he'd look at me with wide, innocent eyes. "I never said that, Clara. Are you sure you're remembering correctly? Or, you're overthinking things, honey. You know how stressed I get when you question my process." He'd make me feel like I was crazy, like my memory was failing, like my concerns were trivial and burdensome. I'd find myself apologizing, even when I knew, deep down, I was right. My internal compass, once so steady, began to waver. I started second-guessing myself, my perceptions, my sanity. Was I too demanding? Too anxious? Was I stifling his creativity with my mundane worries about bills and deadlines? Maya, bless her, saw it. She'd come over for our weekly wine night, and her gaze would linger on Leo's latest masterpiece, a half-finished sculpture that had been half-finished 4 months, or on his expensive new art book, which I knew I'd paid for. "He seems busy," she'd remark, her tone carefully neutral. "Still working on that big project?" I'd jump to his defense, rattling off his latest ideas, his upcoming meetings. Maya would just nod, a knowing look in her eyes that I chose to ignore. She'd tried to gently probe. "Are you happy, Clara? Really happy?" And I'd force a bright smile, of course. "He's amazing. Just a bit stressed with his art, you know how it is." I was so desperate to believe my own lie that I couldn't see the concern etched on her face. His big project became an all-consuming entity. It was an abstract concept, something about reimagining urban landscapes through kinetic sculpture, or exploring post-digital identity through immersive installations. The details were always vague, the timelines fluid. But it required more and more of my financial input. "I need this specialized material, Clara, it's crucial for the prototype. There's a workshop in Berlin I have to attend, it'll open so many doors." Each request was framed as an investment in our future, a stepping stone to his inevitable breakthrough. And I, still clinging to the fantasy, emptied my savings, took on extra freelance work, even considered taking out a small loan. My own dreams of a condo faded into the background, replaced by the shimmering mirage of Leo's success. He started spending more time away from the apartment. Ostensibly at his studio, a rented storage unit he'd converted into a makeshift workspace, or at meetings with potential investors and collaborators. He'd come home late, smelling faintly of expensive cologne and something else, something I couldn't quite place, like a blend of cigarette smoke and unfamiliar perfume. When I asked about his day, he'd give me clipped, vague answers. Just grinding, babe. Big things are happening. His phone became an extension of his hand, always face down, always muted. If it buzzed, he'd snatch it up, walk into the other room, and whisper into it. When I jokingly asked who he was talking to, he'd snap, "It's work, Clara. Confidential stuff. You wouldn't understand." And I, again, would retreat, feeling small and foolish for asking. The cracks were widening, but I was still patching them with my own desperate hope and manufactured trust. I was so afraid of what I might find if I truly looked. The big project was now officially named Nexus, a pretentious title for something I still couldn't quite grasp. Leo was constantly on his phone, muttering about seed funding and angel investors. He'd spend hours in front of his laptop, typing furiously, occasionally letting out a triumphant whoop or a frustrated sigh. He'd show me elaborate presentations filled with abstract diagrams and buzzwords I didn't understand, but which he assured me were revolutionary. I'd nod, feigning comprehension, trying to match his enthusiasm. He was so passionate, so driven. How could I not believe in him? My own life, meanwhile, felt increasingly peripheral. My graphic design work, once a source of pride and creative satisfaction, now felt like a means to an end, a way to fund Leo's grand vision. My colleagues noticed my distraction. "Everything okay, Clara?" my team lead, Ben, had asked one afternoon, his brow furrowed with concern. "You seem a bit stretched." I brushed him off, blaming a tight deadline, but the truth was, I was stretched. Emotionally, financially, physically. I was constantly tired, constantly worried, constantly trying to anticipate Leo's needs, to make his life easier so he could focus on Nexus. He started going to more and more networking events. These weren't the casual art openings we used to frequent. These were swanky, exclusive affairs in downtown lofts and rooftop bars, places I knew I couldn't afford to even look at the menu. He'd always tell me, "It's not really your scene, Clara. It's mostly investors and tech bros, super boring. You'd hate it." Or, "I need to make a certain impression, you know? It's all about optics. You don't want to be seen as the artist with the, well, you know." He'd trail off, and I'd fill in the blank, the sensible, boring girlfriend. It stung, but I told myself he was just trying to protect me from a world I didn't belong in. I'd stay home, curled on the sofa with a book, trying to ignore the gnawing feeling of exclusion. One evening, he came home particularly late, his shirt slightly rumpled, a faint scent of expensive perfume clinging to his jacket. He was unusually jovial, almost manic. "Big night, Clara. Met some key players. Nexus is really gaining traction." He pulled me into a hug, but it felt perfunctory, his gaze already drifting towards his phone. Later, as he showered, I noticed a small, elegant business card had fallen out of his jacket pocket onto the floor. It was for a high-end PR firm, specializing in disruptive startups. And scribbled on the back, in a delicate, looping script, was a phone number and a single word, "Call." My stomach clenched. It wasn't the number itself, or the word, but the distinct, floral scent that wafted from the card, the same perfume I'd smelled on his jacket. I picked it up, my fingers trembling, and slipped it back into his pocket before he emerged from the bathroom. I told myself it was nothing. Just a contact. He was networking. That's what artists do. But the seed of doubt, once a tiny speck, was beginning to sprout. I started paying more attention. His phone, once a casual accessory, was now a fortress. He'd never leave it unattended, even for a second. If I walked into the room, he'd quickly minimize whatever was on the screen. He'd take calls in the hallway, his voice hushed. I felt like a detective in my own home, constantly searching for clues, constantly trying to piece together a puzzle whose pieces kept shifting. The man I loved, the man I shared my life with, felt increasingly like a stranger. And the worst part? I was terrified of what I might find. Terrified that the beautiful, fragile world I'd built around us would shatter. So I kept quiet, I kept observing, and I kept pretending that everything was fine. The air in our apartment, once filled with laughter and easy intimacy, now felt thick with unspoken questions and a growing, suffocating silence. The first undeniable tremor hit me like a cold wave. It was a Tuesday evening, Leo was working late at his studio, and I was scrolling aimlessly through Instagram, trying to distract myself from the persistent hum of unease in my chest. I landed on the profile of a woman I vaguely recognized from one of the art openings Leo had dragged me to months ago, a striking, impeccably dressed woman with an air of effortless sophistication. Her latest post was a carousel of photos from what looked like a lavish private party. And there, in the background of one of the photos, laughing, his arm casually slung around her waist, was Leo. My breath hitched. The caption read, "Another incredible night celebrating the future of innovation. So proud of the team behind #Nexus. Big things coming soon." Sparkles. The photo wasn't blurry, it wasn't a trick of the light. It was unmistakably Leo, looking far more relaxed and joyful than he had in weeks with me. And the woman? She wasn't just a business partner. The way he was looking at her, the subtle intimacy of his touch, it was the look of a man deeply infatuated. My heart pounded in my ears, a frantic drumbeat of disbelief and dawning horror. I slammed my laptop shut, the sound echoing in the silent apartment. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely hold my phone. I wanted to call Maya, to scream, to cry, but the words were stuck in my throat. I just sat there, staring at the blank screen, the image burned into my mind. Leo, laughing, with another woman, celebrating our project. The betrayal was a physical ache, a sharp, twisting pain in my gut. When he finally came home, hours later, he was humming. He walked into the living room, saw me sitting there in the dark, and his smile faltered. "Clara? Why are you up? Everything okay?" His voice was too bright, too casual. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time, I saw not the charming artist I loved, but a stranger. A liar. "Where were you, Leo?" My voice was flat, devoid of emotion, a stark contrast to the hurricane raging inside me. He hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. "Studio, babe. You know. Grinding. Had a breakthrough with the kinetic mechanism." He tried to sound tired, but his eyes, though a little bloodshot, sparkled with an almost triumphant energy. "And the networking event with the tech bros?" I pushed, my voice still eerily calm. He frowned. "Oh, that was earlier. Just a quick pop-in. Didn't stay long." He started to move towards the kitchen, presumably for a glass of water, a natural deflection. "Funny," I said, my voice rising slightly, "because it looks like you stayed long enough to get your picture taken. With a very pretty business partner." I watched his face carefully. The color drained from it. His casual posture stiffened. The mask slipped. He turned, slowly. His eyes, once so warm and inviting, were now cold, calculating. "What are you talking about?" he said, but it was a weak attempt. He knew. "Don't play dumb, Leo," I spat, finally letting some of the venom out. "I saw the Instagram post. Your business partner. Your arm around her. The caption about Nexus and big things coming soon. While I was here, waiting for you, funding your big things." He sighed, a theatrical, put-upon sound. "Clara, it's not what you think. She's an investor. A crucial connection. We were just celebrating a small win. It's purely professional." His voice was smooth. Practiced, the gaslighting already kicking in. Professional? I laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. You think I'm stupid, Leo? I saw the way you were looking at her. I saw the way you touched her. And the perfume on your jacket? The business card with her number? Don't insult my intelligence. His face hardened. The charming artist was gone, replaced by something cold and unfamiliar. Fine, he said, his voice laced with contempt. You want the truth? Yes, I'm seeing someone. So what? You're so suffocating, Clara. So needy. Always questioning, always doubting. I can't breathe around you. I need someone who understands my vision, who doesn't drag me down with their petty anxieties. The words hit me like physical blows. Suffocating. Needy. Dragging him down. All the insecurities he'd subtly nurtured in me, now thrown back in my face as justification for his betrayal. My vision blurred with tears, but I refused to let them fall. Not in front of him. So Nexus was just a front? I whispered, the real horror dawning on me. All the money? All the time? All my savings? Was it all just to fund your new life? With her? He shrugged, a casual, dismissive gesture that made my blood run cold. It's business, Clara. You wouldn't understand. You were useful. For a while. But I've moved on. Nexus is going to be huge. And I need a partner who can keep up, who isn't stuck in the past. He turned and walked towards the bedroom, leaving me alone in the dark living room, the bitter taste of betrayal thick in my mouth. The world had just tilted on its axis, and I was left standing in the wreckage, utterly, devastatingly alone. The silence that followed was deafening, punctuated only by the frantic pounding of my own shattered heart. The morning after was a blur of raw, visceral pain. I woke up on the sofa, where I must have collapsed after Leo's cruel exit. The apartment felt cold, empty, a hollow shell of the home it once was. He was gone. His side of the bed was undisturbed, a cruel reminder of his absence. His clothes, his art supplies, his endless books, all still there, mocking me with their presence. But Leo himself was gone. He hadn't even left a note. Just vanished, like a ghost, leaving behind a gaping wound in my chest. I stumbled into the kitchen, my body aching, my mind numb. The coffee maker sat silently, a relic of a routine that no longer existed. I couldn't eat. The thought of food made my stomach churn. My phone buzzed, a text from Maya. Hey, checking in. Everything okay? You seemed a bit off last night. I stared at the screen, tears finally welling up, hot and stinging. No, I typed back, my fingers clumsy. Nothing is okay. He left. He cheated. It was all a lie. Her response was immediate. On my way. Don't move. Maya arrived an hour later, her face etched with concern. She took one look at me, my tear-streaked face, my disheveled hair, my hollow eyes, and her own eyes welled up. She didn't say anything, just pulled me into a fierce hug, holding me while I finally broke down, sobbing into her shoulder, the dam of pain bursting open. I recounted everything, the Instagram post, his cruel words, the casual dismissal of our entire relationship. Maya listened, her grip tightening on my arm, her jaw clenched. That bastard, she hissed when I finished, her voice trembling with fury. I knew something was off. I told you, Clara, I told you. I know, I choked out, wiping my nose with the back of my hand. I didn't want to see it. He used you, she said, her voice hard. He used your money, your kindness, your belief in him. He's a parasite, Clara. The word parasite resonated, chilling me to the bone. It felt accurate, terrifyingly so. He had latched onto me, drained me, and then discarded me when he found a new host. The next few days were a haze of grief, anger, and humiliation. I couldn't bring myself to go to work. I called in sick, citing a personal emergency. My apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt like a prison, every corner filled with memories of him. His scent still lingered on his pillow, his toothbrush still sat next to mine in the bathroom. It was unbearable. Maya stayed with me, a constant, comforting presence. She cooked, she cleaned, she just sat with me in silence, letting me cry, letting me rage. She helped me block him on every social media platform, delete his number, scrub him from my digital life. But the emotional imprint was harder to erase. "We need to get him out of here," Maya declared one afternoon, her voice firm. She was talking about his belongings. Every single piece of his crap. "We need to box it up and get it out of your space. You can't heal with his ghost haunting every room." The thought of touching his things, of confronting the physical remnants of our shattered life, filled me with dread. But Maya was right. It had to be done. We started in the living room, carefully packing his art books, his obscure philosophical texts, the half-finished sculpture that had been his big breakthrough. Each item was a fresh stab of pain, a reminder of the lies he'd spun. As I packed his desk, I found a crumpled receipt tucked under a pile of papers. It was for a high-end jewelry store, dated 2 weeks ago. My heart lurched. I remembered that day, he'd told me he was meeting a potential investor for lunch. I had even given him money for it. The receipt wasn't for a business lunch. It was for a diamond pendant. A small, delicate piece, but undeniably expensive. My mind flashed to the woman in the Instagram photo, her neck bare. A cold, sickening certainty settled in my stomach. He hadn't just cheated. He had bought her gifts with my money. The humiliation was a fresh wave, washing over me, leaving me gasping for air. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was financial, a calculated, cruel exploitation. The diamond pendant receipt was the match that lit the fuse of my simmering anger. It wasn't just about the cheating anymore, it was about the calculated deception, the blatant disregard for my trust and my financial well-being. He hadn't just broken my heart, he had stolen from me, systematically draining my resources under the guise of our future. The grief began to give way to a cold, hard fury. "He bought her a diamond necklace with my money," I told Maya, holding up the crumpled receipt, my voice shaking with a mixture of disbelief and rage. Maya snatched the receipt from my hand, her eyes widening. "Are you serious? That absolute piece of trash. This is beyond cheating, Clara. This is fraud. This is criminal." Her outrage mirrored my own. We sat there, sifting through his remaining belongings like forensic investigators, searching for more clues. We found other receipts, expensive dinners, designer clothes, tickets to exclusive events, all dated during periods when he claimed to be grinding at the studio or networking. My money. All of it. Poured into a lavish lifestyle for him and his new girlfriend, while I scrimped and saved, convinced I was building a shared dream. The more we uncovered, the clearer the picture became. Nexus wasn't a groundbreaking art project or a revolutionary tech startup. It was a phantom, a carefully constructed illusion designed to extract funds and connections. We found a folder on his old laptop, still logged in, labeled Nexus Pitch Decks. Inside, there were multiple versions, each subtly tweaked, each targeting a different type of investor, art patrons, tech VCs, even social impact funds. The core content was vague, filled with buzzwords, but the financial projections were always wildly optimistic, promising impossible returns. And in one of the subfolders, buried deep, we found a series of emails. Emails between Leo and his new business partner, the woman from Instagram, whose name I now knew was Serena. The emails were sickening. They weren't just professional, they were overtly flirtatious, then explicitly romantic. And in one particularly vile exchange, dated just a few weeks ago, Leo had written. Clara still buying it, hook, line, and sinker. Bless her naive little heart. She thinks Nexus is going to make us rich. Little does she know, it's already making us rich, darling. And soon, we'll be free of her sensible little life and her endless questions. My blood ran cold. Bless her naive little heart. The words echoed in my mind, a mocking refrain. He had been laughing at me. All this time, while I was sacrificing, while I was believing, while I was pouring my soul into him, he had been mocking me behind my back. The humiliation was a physical blow, worse than any heartbreak. It wasn't just betrayal, it was contempt. "Oh, Clara," Maya whispered, her voice thick with tears, as she read over my shoulder. "I am so sorry." But I wasn't crying. A strange, cold calm had settled over me. The pain was still there, a dull ache, but it was overshadowed by a burning, incandescent rage. He had not only stolen my money and my future, he had stolen my dignity. And I was going to get it back. "He won't get away with this," I said, my voice low and steady. "He won't." Maya looked at me, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to expose him," I said, the words feeling powerful, liberating. "Every single lie. Every single penny he stole. Every cruel word he said behind my back. I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who Leo really is." The idea of revenge, not out of petty spite, but out of a desperate need for justice, began to take root. It wasn't about hurting him as much as he hurt me. It was about stripping away his carefully constructed facade, about reclaiming my narrative. I wouldn't be the naive, heartbroken victim. I would be the woman who fought back. The plan, though still nebulous, began to form in the icy clarity of my newfound resolve. The resolve was a fragile thing at first, a tiny ember flickering in the ashes of my shattered life. But with each piece of evidence Maya and I unearthed, it grew stronger, hotter. We were methodical, almost clinical. We downloaded every incriminating email, every fake invoice, every social media post that connected Leo and Serena, highlighting the dates and the subtle shifts in their relationship. We even found a hidden folder on his old laptop, with photos of them on a business trip to Paris, a trip he'd told me was for a solo artist retreat and for which I'd paid his flight and accommodation. The Eiffel Tower in the background, their faces close, laughing. It was a punch to the gut, but also a potent fuel for my growing determination. My focus shifted from mourning the relationship to dissecting the fraud. I contacted Ben, my team lead from work, under the guise of needing technical advice. Ben was a quiet, observant man, a whiz with data and digital forensics. I vaguely explained I was dealing with a complex personal situation involving financial discrepancies. He listened patiently, his intelligent eyes missing nothing. When I showed him some of the financial documents, the inflated invoices for materials, the ambiguous consultancy fees, he immediately saw the red flags. "This looks like a classic shell game, Clara," he said, his voice low. "Inflated expenses, vague deliverables. Someone's trying to move money around without leaving a clear paper trail." I swallowed hard. He was my boyfriend. He told me it was for his art project. Ben looked at me with genuine sympathy. "I'm so sorry, Clara. This is a lot. Do you want me to help you dig deeper? I have some tools that might uncover more." I hesitated. This was exposing my deepest humiliation to a colleague. But the need for justice outweighed my shame. "Yes," I said, my voice firm. "Please. I need to know everything." Ben, with his quiet efficiency, became an invaluable ally. He helped me trace the payments from my accounts to various shell companies Leo had set up, companies that had no legitimate business activity, only a series of transfers that eventually led to a single, offshore account. He even managed to recover deleted messages from Leo's old phone, which I'd found hidden in a drawer. These messages were even more damning. Conversations with Serena planning their future, mocking me, discussing how to milk me for more funds before the big reveal. They talked about buying a villa in Tuscany, about launching Nexus with Serena as the public face, using the seed money they'd extracted from me. The depth of their malice was staggering. It wasn't just a fling, it was a calculated scheme, a long con. I was a mark, a resource to be exploited. The realization was liberating in a perverse way. It stripped away any lingering doubt, any shred of self-blame. This wasn't about me being needy or suffocating. This was about them being predatory. The plan began to solidify. It wasn't about public shaming on social media, though that was tempting. It was about dismantling his carefully constructed facade where it mattered most, his professional reputation and his new relationship. I learned from Maya, who had a friend in the art world, that Leo and Serena were planning a soft launch for Nexus at an exclusive, invite-only gallery event, the very type of event he used to tell me was not my scene. This was it. This was my moment. The goal wasn't to scream or make a scene. It was to present the undeniable truth, calmly and methodically, to the very people he was trying to impress. The investors, the gallerists, the influential figures who held the keys to his future. I would expose him as a fraud, a con artist, a man who built his dreams on the ruins of others' trust. Maya would be there for emotional support, and Ben had prepared a concise, irrefutable dossier of evidence, ready to be presented. My heart pounded with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. The game was on. The night of the Nexus soft launch felt surreal. The air crackled with anticipation, a mix of expensive perfume, hushed conversations, and the clinking of champagne glasses. It was held in a minimalist, high-ceilinged gallery downtown, bathed in a cool, almost clinical light. Leo, in a sharp suit I knew he couldn't afford on his own, stood beside Serena, who looked stunning in a flowing silk dress. They were a picture of success, radiating confidence, the perfect power couple. My stomach churned, but I held my head high. Maya was by my side, her hand a reassuring weight on my arm. Ben was strategically positioned near the entrance, a discreet briefcase in hand. I had chosen my outfit carefully, a simple, elegant black dress that exuded quiet strength, not desperation. My hair was pulled back, my makeup minimal. I wanted to look composed, professional, utterly unbothered. The contrast to the emotional wreck I'd been just weeks ago was stark. This wasn't about tears, it was about clarity. We moved through the crowd, blending in, observing. Leo caught my eye across the room. His confident smile faltered, replaced by a flicker of surprise, then irritation. He quickly averted his gaze, whispering something to Serena, who glanced over, her eyes narrowing. They clearly hadn't expected me. Good. The main event began. Leo stepped onto a small raised platform, a spotlight illuminating him. He launched into his practiced spiel about Nexus, the revolutionary concept, the disruptive technology, the future of art and urban interaction. His voice was smooth, charismatic, the same voice that had once charmed me into believing his every word. Serena stood beside him, beaming, playing the role of the supportive, brilliant partner. He was selling a fantasy, and the audience, captivated, was buying it. This was my cue. As he paused for dramatic effect, just before introducing Serena as his co-founder and visionary partner, I stepped forward, my voice clear and steady, cutting through the murmuring crowd. "Excuse me," I said, my voice carrying surprisingly well in the hushed gallery. All heads turned. Leo froze, his eyes wide with alarm. Serena's smile vanished. "I believe there's a crucial piece of information missing from this presentation," I continued, walking slowly towards the platform, every step deliberate. "A piece of information about the true funding behind Nexus." A ripple went through the crowd. Leo stammered, "Clara, what are you doing? This is highly inappropriate." "Inappropriate?" I raised an eyebrow, a cold smile playing on my lips. What's truly inappropriate, Leo, is building your visionary project on a foundation of lies, fraud, and stolen money. Murmurs erupted. Serena stepped forward, her face a mask of indignation. Who is this woman? Security. I am Clara Vance, I announced, my voice gaining strength, Leo Maxwell's former partner. And the sole, unwitting investor in what he so eloquently calls nexus. I turned to the stunned audience. For the past 2 years, I have financially supported Leo, pouring my life savings, my earnings, and my trust into his artistic endeavors. I believed in him. I believed in this project. What I didn't know was that Nexus was nothing more than a sophisticated shell game, designed to fund his lavish lifestyle and his secret relationship with Ms. Serena Dubois here. I paused, letting the shock settle. Leo was pale, his jaw clenched. Serena looked furious, but also terrified. I have here, I continued, gesturing to Ben, who stepped forward, opening his briefcase, irrefutable evidence. Bank statements, fake invoices, recovered emails, and even photos of Mr. Maxwell and Ms. Dubois enjoying a romantic trip to Paris, all paid for with my money, under the guise of business expenses for Nexus. Ben began to hand out neatly organized folders to the stunned investors and gallerists in the front row. The room descended into chaos. Whispers turned into shouts. People started flipping through the documents, their faces shifting from curiosity to disbelief to disgust. This is outrageous. Leo finally roared, his charming facade completely shattered, replaced by raw panic. She's lying. She's a scorned ex, trying to ruin my career. Am I? I challenged, my voice unwavering. Or is it that the truth is simply inconvenient for your carefully constructed narrative, Leo? Ask him about the diamond pendant he bought Ms. Dubois 2 weeks ago. Ask him where the money came from. Ask him about the emails where he openly mocked my naive little heart while planning his grand escape. The gallery director, a stern-faced woman who had been listening with growing alarm, stepped forward. Mr. Maxwell, Ms. Dubois, I think you need to explain yourselves. This is a serious accusation, and these documents appear compelling. Serena tried to interject, but her voice was shrill, unconvincing. Leo looked trapped, cornered. His eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape, but there was none. The crowd, once his captivated audience, now looked at him with a mixture of pity and contempt. His grand unveiling had become his public execution. And I, Clara Vance, was holding the axe. The aftermath was a whirlwind of satisfying, albeit emotionally draining, chaos. Leo's carefully constructed world imploded in real time. The gallery event, meant to be his triumphant debut, became a public spectacle of his downfall. The investors, who had been so eager to throw money at his revolutionary project, quickly distanced themselves, their faces a mixture of embarrassment and fury. The gallery director, horrified by the scandal, immediately announced the cancellation of the Nexus exhibition. Leo and Serena were escorted out by security, their faces ashen, their carefully curated image shattered into a million pieces. I stayed for a while, surrounded by a small group of sympathetic faces. Maya was beaming, her arm around me, a silent testament to our shared victory. Ben, ever the professional, nodded approvingly. Several people, including a prominent art critic who had been at the event, approached me, expressing their shock and offering their support. Thank you for speaking your truth, Clara, the critic had said, her voice grave. It takes immense courage to do what you did. Her words were a balm to my raw soul. The story, predictably, went viral. Not just in the art world, but on social media. Someone had filmed my confrontation, and the clip, raw and unedited, spread like wildfire. Artist exposed for fraud and betrayal by ex-girlfriend blared headlines on obscure art blogs and even a few mainstream news sites. My name, Clara Vance, was suddenly synonymous with strength and resilience. Leo Maxwell, once the charming, enigmatic artist, became a cautionary tale, his name dragged through the digital mud. Serena Dubois, his visionary partner, was equally implicated, her reputation irrevocably tarnished. The justice was swift and public. But the emotional fallout, for me, was a longer, more arduous journey. The initial euphoria of exposing him was replaced by a deep exhaustion. The anger, once a driving force, began to recede, leaving behind a vast, empty space. I had won the battle, but the war within me was far from over. I returned to work, slowly, cautiously. My colleagues were incredibly supportive, offering kind words and understanding glances. Ben, in particular, was a quiet pillar of strength, often just leaving a coffee on my desk or offering to take on an extra task if he saw me struggling. My focus, for the first time in years, was solely on myself, my career, and my healing. The apartment, once filled with Leo's presence, now felt truly mine again. Maya helped me clear out the last of his belongings, donating what we could, discarding the rest. We repainted the walls, rearranged the furniture, transforming the space into a sanctuary of peace and independence. Each brushstroke, each moved piece of furniture, felt like a step towards reclaiming my life. I started therapy. It was difficult at first, dredging up the pain, the humiliation, the lingering self-doubt. But with each session, I peeled back another layer of the trauma, confronting the naive girl I had been, the woman who had allowed herself to be manipulated and exploited. I learned about gaslighting, about narcissistic abuse, about the insidious ways in which charming predators operate. Understanding the mechanics of his deception helped me to forgive myself for falling for it. It wasn't my fault. I wasn't stupid, I was empathetic. He was a master manipulator. The healing wasn't linear. There were days when the memories would crash over me, leaving me breathless with shame and anger. But those days became fewer and further between. I reconnected with old hobbies I'd abandoned, spent more time with friends who truly cared, and poured my creative energy back into my design work, finding joy in it again. I started saving money again, not for a shared future with someone else, but for my future, my own condo, my own security. The idea of it, once a distant dream, now felt tangible, within reach. The quiet hum of my newly reclaimed life began to replace the frantic beat of my shattered past. The apartment, stripped of Leo's lingering presence, felt lighter, imbued with a sense of peace I hadn't realized was missing. I'd wake up each morning, not with a knot of anxiety in my stomach, but with a quiet sense of purpose. The public exposure of Leo had been cathartic, a necessary act of justice, but the real work of healing was internal, a slow, painstaking process of rebuilding my trust in myself. Therapy continued to be a crucial anchor. My therapist, Dr. Evelyn Reed, was a calm, insightful woman who helped me navigate the labyrinth of my emotions. We talked about the concept of empathic overextension, my tendency to give too much, to prioritize others' needs over my own, especially in relationships. She helped me understand that my vulnerability wasn't a flaw, but a strength that had been exploited. The goal wasn't to become cynical or cold, but to develop healthier boundaries, to recognize red flags, and to trust my own intuition. I started to see my past self, the naive Clara, not with judgment, but with compassion. She had loved deeply, believed wholeheartedly, and that was something to be proud of, not ashamed of. The betrayal wasn't a reflection of her worth, but a testament to Leo's profound lack of it. This shift in perspective was monumental. It allowed me to shed the shame that had clung to me like a shroud. My friendships deepened. Maya was a rock, unwavering in her support, her fierce loyalty a constant comfort. We spent countless evenings dissecting everything, laughing about the absurdity of it all, and planning my future. Ben, too, became a surprising source of quiet companionship. He'd occasionally invite me for coffee, and we'd talk about work, about life, about everything and nothing. His steady, reliable presence was a welcome contrast to the volatile drama of my past. He never pushed, never pried, just offered a safe, calm space. My career flourished. Without the constant drain of Leo's demands and the emotional turmoil, I was able to fully immerse myself in my work. My creativity, once stifled, began to flow freely again. I took on more challenging projects, pitched new ideas, and even started mentoring junior designers. The sense of accomplishment was deeply satisfying, a tangible reminder of my own capabilities and worth. Social media, once a source of pain and comparison, became a tool for connection and empowerment. I saw the viral video of my confrontation less as a moment of public humiliation and more as a testament to my strength. I even received messages from strangers, women who had experienced similar betrayals, thanking me for speaking out, for giving them courage. It was a powerful reminder that I wasn't alone, and that my story, painful as it was, could be a source of strength for others. I started dating again, cautiously, tentatively. The first few dates were awkward, filled with a hyper-awareness of red flags, a constant internal checklist. But gradually, I learned to relax, to trust my gut, to recognize genuine kindness and respect. I wasn't looking for someone to complete me, I was already whole. I was looking for someone to share life with, someone who saw me, truly saw me, and celebrated my independence. One evening, months after the Nexus debacle, I was out with Maya and Ben at a new art gallery opening, one I'd chosen, one that featured artists whose work I genuinely admired. I was laughing, feeling light and free, when I saw him. Leo. He was standing in a corner, alone, looking disheveled and noticeably thinner. His once charming smile was gone, replaced by a sullen frown. He caught my eye, and for a moment, his gaze held mine. There was no anger, no defiance, just a flicker of something that looked like regret? Or perhaps just the bitter taste of his own failure. I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. I simply held his gaze, a quiet, confident smile on my lips. I wasn't the naive girl he had mocked. I wasn't the heartbroken victim. I was Clara Vance, stronger, wiser, and utterly free. He was a ghost of a past I had finally, truly, put behind me. I turned back to Maya and Ben, my laughter echoing in the gallery, a sound of pure, unadulterated triumph. My future, once a shattered dream, was now a vibrant, limitless canvas, waiting for me to paint it, on my own terms.